Hello again, everybody. This is Mr. Everything, and I'm coming at you with another Wargaming and miniature video. In this video, we're going to continue on with my World War II project, but I'm bringing something special today. What we're going to do is we're going to make the chapel for the Lafier Bridge campaign. Okay, and the first thing I want to do is kind of go over all the things that I'm going to be using for that chapel. All right, first of all, we're going to start off with, I have a base here. This is craft plywood. I just cut it into a shape and a size that I'm going to need for the battle, right? And then the next step is I have a 60, yeah, 60 by 80 piece of plywood here, that this is going to be the floor for the church. So this is going to be the inside floor of the church. I thought about gluing it directly to the base and making this whole piece a one-piece diorama that I can move around, but I'm going to actually make it a two-piece diorama. I'm going to put a foundation on here, and then I'm going to make my chapel on this, and then this can just sit on the foundation on the cemetery base. Now this is going to be this is a standard Flames of War medium base, and if you can see right there, it'll fit nicely inside this chapel. I could easily put two of them inside this chapel once I get it done. Now I also have some Woodland Scenics tombstones. These are N scale, which might be a little small for my purposes, but I compared them to my 15mm miniatures, and they look okay. They look pretty good. So I'm going to put them in the field in the second half, because the chapel will be in the first half, and then the cemetery will be on the far side. Okay. Another thing. I'm going to keep going with all the supplies that I'm using. I have some N-scale stone gray bricks. This comes in 3 sheets. This should be enough to do all the walls that go around the church and cemetery, but it also, I'm planning on using it along the foundation of the church. Okay, so I got some popsicle sticks here, and these are the 10mm popsicle sticks. You can see they're probably 9.7 or something like that, I think is what they're officially called. And these are going to be walls around the outer edge of my church. I'm going to have to cut the tips off, because you don't want rounded edged walls at the end, right? And these are going to be covered with the bricks and mounted onto my board. I got these 2.5-inch sticks. Just so I don't have to cut these. And these are going to be my front, where there's going to be a doorway, basically a gap. I still need to cut the tips off of these, and 3 of these, right? Because I'm going to have 3 walls, and then these 2 walls, they all have to have their tips cut off. Okay, so far so good. Now you can see, let's not look at that just yet. You can see I've got a bunch of sprues here. These are some Napoleonic, either Warlord games, Perry or Victrix. They're basically just extra sprues. And these sprues, I'm going to cut pieces, probably about 6 pieces, and they're going to be in the corners of the what am I trying to say? They're going to be in the corners of my walls. Okay, I was concerned about that. Okay, so these guys are these sheets are not long enough, so I might actually cut these in half so that I could put a support beam in the middle. So I'll have like one at each side of the doorway, and then one in each corner, and then one in each side, if that makes sense. And then these will just butt directly up against them, and they will look like the sprues will look like little corner supports, or I'm not sure what they're called, columns. I have some plasticard here that I'm going to use to I'm going to put it on the inside of the door. I'm going to score it so it'll look like wood, and then when everything is painted, hopefully that'll look good. Okay, so far so good. Okay, I got a couple of different types of glue. Yeah. Okay, I got the tacky glue, and that's going to be for the paper that goes onto either the wood or the chapel, right? And then I got some clear grip to assemble the chapel and affix the walls down to the ground. Okay, so this is more for assembly, and this is more for the paper walls and the window frames, door frame. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to use dark earth for the grounds. We'll also apply some flock in various areas, and maybe some tufts and bushes. But this is artboard. This artboard is going to be the walls of the church, and possibly the roof frame is going to be like the gables are going to be made from this as well. And then I'm going to use some plastruc to make the actual roof out of, because I can score this and make it look like ceiling tiles. If I miss something, we'll get back to it. Of course, I'm going to need a straight edge, a pen. I'm going to need a ruler, of course. Got my X-Acto knife. And then, of course, various colors to paint. Now, I already went ahead and sprayed this last night. Not sure where to get started. Actually, I kind of do know where I want to get started. Okay, I know this is a straight edge because of a previous project. Yeah, I knew that was going to be straight. Perfect. So I'm going to use this as the bottom of my church, right? I'm going to need to make 4 walls. The sides exactly the right length. And there's one other thing that we're going to use, and that is card stock. I have it over in my printer. I'll go grab a sheet of card stock. We're going to make the corners of the church using card stock. Guess I could use a pencil, but the sides, the front and the back, are going to be just a little bit extra. They're going to be this width extra. It's not ground scale. It's not figure scale. What it is, it's eye scale. And what I mean by that is I'm going to make it look good. I care about measuring out exactly 15 millimeters and trying to figure out how tall a guy is, and is it going to look, what I'm concerned about is, does it look like it's the right size, right? Okay, but to be honest, I need to compare it with figures so I don't go too small or too big. Now the reason why I didn't cut like a giant piece was I'm considering putting windows on the front. I'm not going to put any windows on the back wall, but I am going to put windows on the sides. Now these windows can be hand drawn, but I'm not going to hand draw them. Oh, no, not there. And this is 60 by 80. Okay, good. So I can go. Now I considered putting, what's the word? I considered putting cellophane or clear plastic on the inside to represent okay, that works. Now this is what they call backer board. I bought like a 4x8 sheet of this for like $5. And it's specifically used for like backing art projects or photographs, stuff like that. So now I can cut this around in a circle like this. So I have to be kind of gentle when it comes to that. But before I do that, before I do any of that, I want, where's that other backboard? Here it is. I needed to make the foundation that's going to go on here, that the church is going to sit on. And I want it to be just slight. Okay, this is perfect actually. Wow, okay. That little piece right there is going to be perfect for me. I want it to be slightly larger than the church itself, so the church will sit on it and it'll be pretty obvious where the church belongs. Okay, we're going to get a little bit closer. I want it to be just maybe a couple of millimeters larger. Okay, so this will go on this. It's actually going to be like a little raised area, right? And then the church will sit on it. But since the door is going to be right there, I want there to be like a little platform. A porch, if you will. Okay. You can hear my table squeaking. Squeak, 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 squeak. Okay, I'm going to give enough room to put these walls up and just a little bit of space between the wall and the church. Not a lot, doesn't need to be a lot. Just like that. But then I'm going to take this church and I'm going to cant it just a little bit. Like that. Because that's the way it looks historically. Okay. Are we there? Ah, we're there. Alright, now there's going to be a little bit of fuzz in there, and that's what I was talking about. Just go in with your knife and clear it up. I find that this backer board is a lot better for building buildings than foam board. Foam board at this scale is too thick. It's probably around 6 millimeters thick. This is probably 2 millimeters. So this makes great walls. It's sturdy, and you don't have to deal with that styrofoam melting or anything like that on the inside. Yep, that's the sprue I'm going to use. Okay, so now these are rough, and I don't want them to be rough. I want them to be fairly uniform. So now what I'm going to do is go with my X-Acto and just cut straight down, giving me a nice smooth cut. And I'm going to do that on both sides.
Okay, we are back from the live stream. I have the sides cut out. Let's go ahead and glue them together. I'm going to use this Gorilla Clear Grip. Just FYI, there was 7 hours worth of video. I have edited it down to about an hour and a half. I don't know if I can talk for an hour and a half, but I'm going to do my best to fill the dead air so you can, as we go, let you know what I'm doing. All right, so I've already cut out the walls, and I'm gluing them to the wooden base. What I'm trying to do now is line up the front and the back so that they would match up with the front and back walls. I decided to stand it up because that way it should the front of the building should all line up with the wood and the walls. And I noticed this, but I left the clear grip laying on its side, and it was starting to leak out. And so, luckily, I caught it in time where I was able to use that. Now, I am recording this. At this point, we are doing a voiceover of the recording. It has taken me a number of hours to edit the video down to a point where I feel that it's going to be manageable for you to watch. If you can't watch an hour and a half video all at once, come back and watch it a second time, or cut it in half or something like that, or just put it in the background while you're doing your own modeling. This building does turn out to better than expected. I'm very happy with it. So let's go ahead and continue building it. We got the doors cut out. We got the windows cut out. The front and back walls are actually just slightly larger than the sides so that they line up. Plus, what that allows me to do is when I put this rubber band on and it applies the pressure, it actually pushes the front and back walls, presses them up against the side walls. And of course, the wood base frame. All right, now after changing a little bit of my lighting, you can see where the rubber band was just closer to the bottom, closer to the foundation. So I cut out a little piece, and I'm also cutting out these little squares. These squares are going to be the caps for the top of the fence posts or the wall posts. I used a little bit of this double-sided tape so that when I make my posts, I can attach them to the board so that they don't tip over or fall over. I put a little glue on the end of my post and I push it down onto one of these caps. And then you can see it's got like a little flat cap plate on the top. And then I mount these all onto the double-sided tape so that when I prime them or when I paint them, they won't go blowing all over the place because they're so lightweight. I do that as well with the wood, but right now I'm just scoring this plastic card that I'm going to be using as the door. I'm just scoring it because all I want is it looks like there's going to be wood slats or wood, so when I glue it into the building, it'll look like it's a wooden door. Now I cut that piece a little bit larger than the doorway so that I can glue it on both sides. I used a little bit of the clear grip. I tried using super glue at first. It didn't want to stick. Okay, now I noticed that there is exposed wood right there. So I'm going to cut a little piece of this door off to make like a little, not a door jamb, like a step to make it look like it's intentional. Okay, and so I just basically cut off a very small piece. The wood is 3 millimeters. So I'm cutting probably 1.5 millimeters or 2 millimeters because I don't want it to even with the wood. I wanted it to be just short of the wood so that it looked like a little step. Put a little clear grip on there, glued it in. Now I'm just lining it up with the floor, making sure everything is copacetic. It looks good. A little bit more lining up, it looks like. All right. Now, there are some, maybe I'm noticing it right now as I'm editing, that there could be some editorial mistakes. Like I probably could have cut a few extra seconds out of that. But when I was doing the editing, the video is silent, so I don't hear myself making any comments or anything. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to cover up the corners and disguise any of the mistakes. And we have some strips of cardstock that I scored down the middle and I folded into an L shape, so that once we get this hobby tack, this, not hobby tack, what is it? Tacky glue. Yeah, and so the tacky glue will hold the cardstock in the corners, and it will disguise the wall joint. Plus, it'll just give it a little bit of frame look. It'll accentuate the look. Now you'll notice it doesn't go the full length of the wall. It only goes from the top of the side wall down to where I plan to put the brick wall. Because I'm going to paint the building or prime the building, and then after it's painted, then I'm going to come back and put the brick wall onto it. Alrighty, so let's keep going. You can see the four walls, how they're on there, or the corners, I should say. Let's set this off to the side and move on to the next step. And you see it's a separate building. It can be placed anywhere on the table, or I can use it with this terrain piece. Now I'm also going to cover up these corners. I'm going to make a cross. I'm going to basically frame it out, and I'm going to use cardstock for all that as well. Okay, I'm looking for a piece here. I found a piece that's probably big enough to make the cross that I want to make. I'm just going to basically eyeball it, because that's the scale we're using today, is eyeball scale. And so I'm going to cut out a cross. And this is another piece of the video that I probably could have edited out a little bit more effectively, but that's okay. We're gonna just keep going, even with these larger videos, larger time frames that you basically don't. I probably could have edited it down to a smaller amount. Okay, now remember that we are making this for our 15 millimeter World War II Operation Battle Group. I keep saying Operation Battle Group when it's actually just Battle Group. But it's okay. So the cross is going to go right there on the top center, right above the door. It's going to look pretty awesome right there. Let's go ahead and glue that on. Okay, right now I'm gluing it on, and I'm trying to position it. I'm just kind of, standing back from it, looking at it. I put it on the table, and I realize, okay, that's tilting a little bit to the left, so I need to kind of adjust, and luckily the glue hasn't completely dried, so I can, of course, because I just put it on, so I can adjust a little bit. Okay, maybe I went a little too far on that one. And then basically just keep adjusting until I get it right. All right, now what I plan to do here is cut out some cardstock for the door frame and the window frames. So I'm taking a piece of the window that I had cut out and used it as a guide to determine how big of a window frame I needed, and then drawing a line. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut, put these window frames in there, or the windows, and then draw around the windows and then cut them out. And then later I'll go in with a pair of scissors and actually cut the outer edge of the window frames to be put on the building. But right now we're just cutting the strip of 6 window frames out because I do plan to prime that dark gray, as well as actually it's not dark gray, it's kind of a granite gray. I'm going to paint the fence posts, the window frames. I'm also going to be painting the wood walls. Remember, the wood walls are I'm painting them because if there's any exposed wood anywhere, I want to make sure that it is the stone gray, the granite gray, so that even though I'm putting the brick paper on it, I don't want anything exposed. So I go ahead and mount all the wood. And then everything is going to be sprayed granite, as well as the building. The first coat of the building is going to be granite, just as a basic primer undercoat. But I'm not going to leave the building granite. I'm going to actually spray paint the building a very light gray, so that it'll contrast with the dark gray door frame and window frames. Okay, so right now I am building the roof. I cut a couple of pieces out that would fit inside the roof, and I plan to put plasticard on top of these pieces. Plasticard by itself would be too flexible and it would just be all over the place. So I put plasticard on the backer board, and then I scored the plasticard with tiles, and then made some roof tiles, so that when I paint it, those roof tiles will show through. Kind of the same way I did the door. Now I've got these triangle pieces that I cut for the roof supports. I'm putting them a little bit in, like maybe 10, 15 millimeters in from the edge of the roof. That's so that it'll fit inside of the church. I probably could have put it all the way to the end. Hindsight, I probably should have put it all the way to the end, because that would give the roof itself support when the roof, not the roof, the walls, the front and back walls. It'll give the front and back walls support when the roof is in place. But my thought process when I was making this was I wanted to make sure it would fit inside the roof. And so hindsight is 2020. I probably should have just pushed it right up to the edge of the roof. Okay, so right now I'm making a piece that will go along the top of the roof. So I'm going to score the center line. I'm lining it up so that I can find the center line, and then I'm going to fold it into an L shape and glue it across the top where the two roof sides meet along the top ridge. Okay, so we're gluing the second wall on. I'm lining it up with the top and applying a little bit of pressure and making sure everything's just right. I'm like, do I want to touch it? Is it just right? And if not, if there's a little piece of plastic card sticking out the side, or if the backer board is not cut exactly straight, I do go in later, maybe off camera, and I cut a trim down the roof just enough so that it'll fit inside the church. Now I'm placing the top ridge on the roof to cover up the seam, and you got to make sure you have enough enough cardstock to go over the plastic card so that it looks like it's part of the tile work and not so just make it big enough. And now I decide to score one more side of the wall. Looks like I didn't score it enough, and so I score straight lines across every couple of millimeters apart, and then I go back in and score up and down, alternating, making like a brick pattern or a tile pattern on the roof, and then it's basically scored. If I had thought about it ahead of time, I should have scored that before I glued it onto the support pieces. That way it would have laid flat on the table instead of trying to score it while the roof was drying. And this is another piece. That's what I was talking about, reducing the lengths or straightening them out. Basically tweaking it, just making sure that everything is just right so that it'll fit inside of the roof. All right, so everything's been sprayed slate gray, and the building has been, I'm not sure if it's been sprayed yet, but it's going to be sprayed a light gray, like it's almost a white, but it's a gray. So that when I put the gray windowsills and things like that on there, it will contrast, but only slightly. Okay, so now I'm going to go through and take my walls that I plan to build, and I'm going to put them on the brick, and I'm going to cut out enough of the brick. So right now I'm laying it flat, and then I'm going to roll the wall over to give me the top of the wall and the second side of the wall, and then I'm going to cut it out like that. So it'll basically be twice as wide as it needs to be, plus the top part of the brick wall. And you can see how wide they are right there. They're about 20 millimeters. Cut the tips off, or the sides, the little white edges. Put some glue, lay it on the bottom, apply line it up, of course. And it's okay that I slid the wood just a little bit past the bottom of the paper, so that once I glue the wood to the table, there might or might not be like maybe less than a millimeter of gap. And you would normally see that, but when I texture the tile, the texture is going to go right up to the wall, and it's going to disguise or cover any gap between the paper and the bottom of the wood. Okay, so you can see I've already done a little one right there in the middle of the screen. I'm doing these others, and it will, what's the word? I'm going to do them all on one side and let them dry before I decide to fold them over and glue the second side. So right now I'm just gluing one side at a time. Now with my scissors, like I said, I was going to cut these window frames out, but I have a little bit more control with scissors where I'm going to be able to cut at a circle around the top of the windowsill. And you can see I'm cutting about a 2mm frame. And I will cut all of these out. And then we'll be right back. All right, now that we're back, you can see that I've done them all. Now I'm going back into the first one I did, and I'm putting glue on one side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it on the table so that it rolls over, and I'm going to apply pressure because I want the top of it to be glued down and the other side, obviously. And the reason why I do this, the top, is because it'll give the top a brick look as well. And then we do another one. We do them all this way. Put glue on one side again, and then I roll it over nice and tight. I try to make it as tight as possible. And then I apply pressure, and you only have to apply pressure for a few seconds to get it to grip pretty good. And I go through and I make sure there's no air bubbles or anything like that inside. And that's what it'll look like. All right, now I'm not going to show every single one of these, but you get the idea. Glue one side, let it dry, and then glue the other side and fold it over nice and tight. Now, some of these, the paper was a little bit too long, so you just go in later and trim it off or what have you. And this is a beautiful wall piece. I'm actually, and you got the bricks along the top too. That's top notch. All right, now on the building itself, you can see that it's, oh, I don't know what's going on with my focus, but you can see that it's been primed the light gray as well. If I bring it into camera. And what I'm doing now is I'm fixing the, or testing where the brick walls are going to go around the base of the church. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the back one on first, and then fold the two ends across, and then take another brick wall and butt it up to the edge of it, and then be able to, they basically, with the two edges pushed up so close together, it actually, they will disappear. All right, hopefully I fixed the sound. It sounded like you were hearing some kind of fan in the background. So hopefully by lowering the volume of the gain of the microphone, that helps out quite a bit. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on gluing the sides. I'm going to bend. Plus, you notice that the basically I'm pointing out that this wall goes up to the bottom of the corner frames that I had cut and glued on earlier. All right, so let me go ahead and glue these on, fold them over, glue them, and then butt up the second strip and glue it around till it gets to the door. Now this is the dark gray door frame that I primed originally with the slate gray. So let's go ahead and use some Elmer's glue. I'm just going to use I don't want to use this tacky glue because it's going to be just too thick. I think I'm just going to go ahead and use some standard white Elmer's glue on this. And we're back with some Elmer's glue, just a little drop. Rub it on the cardstock frame, and then we'll put it on the door. Just putting these subtle accents around the building, you know, either over the doors or the windows, really bring out the three-dimensional look of the building. Got that one on. I just glue it on. It also covers over the brick, and it makes the door look thicker or deeper, and it also just gives it a cleaner look, you know. And I do the same thing with the windows as well. All right, so let's do the windows next. And that's with the windows being finished. Just basically did the same thing, Elmer's glue on the back, glue them up against the windows. It basically just makes them look a lot deeper. Okay, now you'll notice this church is a very grayscale, right? It's like a dark gray mixed with some light grays. I wanted that specifically, and you can also see the scoring marks on the roof, how that kind of shines through, and that's just with the primer. Get it off the foundation, so now I need to line up the walls and try to figure out the best positioning, because I had marked them with the front and side and back with a pen earlier, but not being a brainiac, once I covered those up with the walls, then there was no way for me to know which one was in the front and the back. So basically I just had to go through and reimagine the walls where they belong. Okay, so using tacky glue, I just glue these walls to the base pretty close to the edge of the slope. Not all the way, you know, there is just a very little bit of flat space on the outside of the wall, but not very much. And then I put some tacky glue on the fence post, and then I'll put it in the corner there. And as I progress, making more and more of the walls, what I'll do is I'll put the tacky glue on the bottom of the wall, but I'll also put it on both sides of the wall so that it'll stick to the fence posts. And then when I go to do the next fence post, the tacky glue will already be on the wall that's on the base. Now, if you look closely at these sprues are not square. They are kind of, there's a word for it. They're not square. One side is thinner than the back side, so it kind of looks like I want to say polyhedron, but it's angled inwards on one side, and so I used that side of the sprue facing into the corner, so it just gives it kind of a almost a rounded effect. But along the sides, I'm sure to put that thin part of the sprue on the inside as well, just to disguise the fact that it's not square. Okay, you push this wall down, but I also push it up against the fence post, the column, I guess. And then we take another column. I'm just kind of picking and choosing which ones are best. I put the top cap facing inward, and then of course I push it up against the glue that's already on the side wall. And then when I put the next wall down, it'll go right up against it. Okay, so we're working our way around the building. You can see the fence posts, you can see the walls, how they're coming together. Now remember that white glue kind of does look a little disastrous, but when you get when it dries and when it's covered in ground texture, you'll never know the difference. All right, putting the fence post in the corner there, looking good. Now we're going to put the last wall on. Now the front of this church is the doorway is not centered on the side of the compound. It is actually off center, closer to the side that the church is on, but not perfect, because remember the church is kind of set at an angle. This path is even more off center. So there's a lot of what's the word? I don't want to say imperfections, because that's not what it is. It's not symmetrical. It's not like the door leads straight into the doorway of the church, into the wall. They're off center. You can see it's a little bit to the left of the where it probably should have been. The church is at a slight angle. It's not straight up and down. It's not perpendicular to the board or the walls. So everything's got a little bit of disformity to it, which I think lends to its overall appearance, because when it is done, it looks more realistic than some of the things that I've done that are very uniform. And I'm off camera. There we go. Let's get it in camera. And let's put some light on it, or off of it, because maybe that's blinding you. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Okay, now it's not going to look like this when it dries. Obviously, we're going to put some texture on it, and we're going to and the white will dry. Okay, the next thing we're going to probably use are the putting the tombstones down. These Woodland Scenics N scale tombstones will look really good with this church. This church, remember, is removable, so I could use it anywhere in any game, pretty much on any battlefield, or I could use it specifically with this graveyard. Okay, let's move the camera a little bit. I want to get better angles. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to listen to see what it sounds like. Okay, it's starting to sound pretty good. I'm happy with that. Okay, so I was just trying to decide, because I was noticing my foundation was the little ramp that I have in front of the foundation is not centered on the door, because if you look at the door, it's a little bit off center to the right. And so I decided I was going to put some kind of plaque or something on the wall next to the door, make it look like it was intentional for the foundation to be a little bit off center as well. So yeah, I'm going to take one of these tombstones. It's got some writing on it. I think it says something about Mr. Jackson on the one I put on the wall. So I'm going to go ahead and glue one next to the door, and then I'm trying to figure out which ones are the best ones to be put in the graveyard itself, or which one would be the best one to put next to the door. And I think the one I chose is the best one, because you could actually read some of it. I don't know if it says died at this time or Mr. Jackson or whatever, but you've been to church, you've seen that they've got like little bulletin boards or plaques on the walls that talk, I don't know, maybe scripture, or maybe they talk about this what's going to happen in today's sermon, or maybe it talks about the priest himself or whatever. So I went ahead and just put a little plaque on there. I think it adds just a little bit extra to the church, and so I set that off to the side. Now we're going to start working with the tombstones. I want to lay out a graveyard, but I also want to make it so that I can put figure bases inside the walled complex area. So I grabbed a couple of my medium-sized bases to give me an idea of where I can put the tombstones and where troops would be able to fit inside the compound. So right now I'm just kind of visualizing. Now I'm starting to glue tombstones along the top. You see one tombstone is glued next to the building close to the northern wall. And I'm also going to put some tombstones between the two stands. And I think I can do... yeah, so like these tombstones won't interfere with these two stands, and then there'll be a row of tombstones along the top, so your troops would actually be standing on the graves. And I'm basically just trying to figure out which tombstones I want to use in what places, and which way do I want them facing. Okay, and at this point right here, I decided that I was going to just use my pen to kind of mark a path of where the footpath would be, how it would go around the graves and around the building, and then between the two rows of tombstones. But that's only to assist me when I start flocking, and just to give me an idea, or actually it's giving me an assistance of where I'm going to put the tombstones, because once the tombstones and everything's down, I'm just going to hit flock pretty much all over. So all right, let's go ahead and go on to the next step here. You can see I've got a variety of different styles of tombstones. There's one of them's a cross, one of them's a plinth, you know, and one of my tombstones is starting to fall over. I think it's that third one on the top, so I need to kind of stand it back up. That one gave me trouble about 2 or 3 times until I finally got it fixed. Okay, so we're going to let these dry before I go on to texturing. Alright, we're ready to texture. Now I'm just going to go ahead and lay this down on some wax paper just in case. And we're using AK Dark Earth. And I'm going to use a little brush, like this little blue brush, to get around in small, tighter locations, like behind behind the tombstones, but also right up against the foundation. Now this brush is not going to be very fast, so I'm going to go ahead and switch out to a larger brush to hit the bigger areas. And then what we'll do is we'll come back to this little brush for the more detailed areas. That's when I realized that brush is not big enough to do the big areas. Let me go get a bigger brush. And then I just cake it on because it's got to be moved around anyway. And then what we'll do is we'll push it up against the walls. We'll get it up against the tombstones. Now, don't get real close to the walls or the tombstones because I'm going to use the smaller brush for that. Alright, I'm moving on to the smaller brush. We're getting around the foundation, and right up against the wall as well. I have autofocus turned on, so sometimes it'll go a little blurry, sometimes it'll focus in and out. I don't know what's going on. But you get the idea. Like, I am pushing it up inside, making sure I get all the little corners covered. So now there's going to be a concrete foundation there that the building can sit on. And then I need to get behind all the tombstones as well. And then we'll also do the outside of the tile, right? Because we got to do a complete coverage. And this will be all the way around. Basically, and we're just pushing it up against the wall to disguise any imperfections on the wall. Now, I like to use brushes to kind of get walkways, get rid of some of the grit in the walkway areas, just to make it a little bit smoother. But the grit actually gives it a little bit of like a weathered effect, or a lived in or a walked on effect. That's pretty cool. So we're just going to let that dry before we start doing any flock. All right, let me clean my brushes and I'll be right back. All right, so we're applying some glue right now, and I'm going to be using 2.5 knock static grass, spring meadow, I do believe, along the outer edge. This is a color that's closer to the actual grass mat that I'm using on the map. This color is probably my favorite color, actually. And so we're gonna cover all four sides of the outer wall with this, and then we'll go start with the inside. So let me get all four walls, and I'll be right back. You also might want to notice that when I applied glue to the front walls. I did not put any directly in front of the gap in the wall. That is going to be dirt. That's basically the path that leads to the road. Now I'm using my makeup brush to knock any grass off back into the box so that I can collect it and save it for future projects. And I tap the bottom of the base to knock any extra flock off of the base. Yeah, and then so once we get this cleaned up, let me go ahead and start with my next color. Now the next color is also knock, but it is called Flowery Meadow. It actually has a mixture of reds and yellow sawdust mixed in with the meadow. This is pre-mixed. I didn't do that. It came that way. It's pretty cool. I'm digging it. It gives me almost like a wild, but it also makes it look a little more, I don't know, flowery or less. What's the word? Less. I don't know how to say this. More peaceful, more comfortable, or gives you a little bit more of the like, not fun, but good emotions because of the yellow and the red mixed in with the green. It has more of a, I'm not going to use the word vibrant because that's not what I'm looking for. It's an emotional reaction, and I want that around a church. So we're going to go ahead and put that on, and you can see it's got the same color static grass, which means it'll look like it belongs there because of the static grass, but because of the red and yellow sawdust flowers that are mixed in with it, you can tell it's got a different atmosphere, a different emotion. Yes, I know, I'm weird. Let's go ahead and keep going, and we'll go ahead and completely flock this. I let it usually sit just for a minute or two before I shake it off, because I like my grasses to have an opportunity to soak down into the glue. And this time I just pat down a little bit. Taking care not to pat down the tombstones. All right, now after a few seconds, we'll go ahead and we'll come back and we'll shake this off, and we'll be ready for the next step. All right, we've shaken it off. You can kind of see that there is a little bit of a walkway path. The church will sit on the foundation, and the path will lead either to the church or the graveyard. Plus, I mentioned there that I'm going to paint the cross white, give it a little bit brighter look to it, and I'm going to paint the door green. And that's what it looks like so far. We got a darker green on the outside that matches the tabletop, and then we got that vibrant green on the inside for the church. All right, so let's go on to the next step, which I think is going to be adding tufts. And I was right. Here we go. We're adding tufts. Now, I have a few of my flower tufts remaining. We're going to go ahead and use those. Those are the yellow flowery tufts. Plus, I'm going to, and I put like just a drop of glue and then bring a tuft over and press it in there. The tuft itself has like a sticky back, so you can stick it onto things and it will stay there forever. But this flock situation on the base is still a little wet. So by using the tuft on the wet glue and flock, it won't stick. So I add a little bit of like a drop of Elmer's so that when it does dry, it'll dry stuck. Now I wanted to use some of these JTT tufts just to see how they work on this base. I'm going to tell you right now, I did use a couple of them in a couple of different locations. I do not like them. They are permanently attached to this grass floor, like they have this 4x6 grass floor, and you have to cut them out, or because if you peel on them, they'll just come apart. So you got to cut the plastic. You can do it with your fingers, but you do have to cut it, and then it just doesn't work as good as the Army Painter ones. So far, I like the Army Painter ones best. Now I have some AK tufts, but I think they're a little too small. They're like 2mm. And I also have some tufts that I got on Amazon I haven't had a chance to use yet. But I will be when I make these bocage coming up in the next few days. All right, so you see how you got to tear the backer paper, which is kind of like a plastic film that it's attached to. Plus, they flock the paper, so I think they expect you to just lay that whole thing down as one piece. But that's not why I bought it. I bought it for the individual tufts. I just don't like they look okay. I just don't like the how you use them or how you get to them. Yeah, you can see the grass is starting to come up. Okay. And I'm trying to straighten up this tuft before I put it on there. And then we'll take my little tool here and we'll press it down into the glue, making sure it's going to stick. And then voila. And I like that brown. That looks really good where it is. Now let me go ahead and clean up a little bit and then we'll be back. All right, so we paint the cross with some white. I'm using antique white because I didn't want it to stand out too much, right? So we used a little bit of white on the cross. And then we're going to use a little bit of green on the door. And this is what, Iosian green or whatever that color is. But I thought it was a pretty good looking green. I probably should go in and apply a wash to the door to make these wood slats stand out. But I'll do that after I build this thing for you guys because I didn't do it on this video. All right, so let's go ahead and get this green door painted. All right, now I did apply a dark gray wash on the roof. I initially put it down into the grooves horizontally, and then I went over with my brush quick strokes going up and down to give it like a weathered look, because if it was raining or anything like that, it would go up and down, not left and right. Now I am going to cover the top board. And I like the fact that it pools up quite a bit, but I don't want it to be so much that it's annoying. So I just give it some quick up and down strokes to give it that weathered effect. Or the rainwater or drippage effect, if that makes sense. There we go. Much better. There we go. And we go ahead and do both sides, and then we'll be right back. All right, now this is the completed church. I pulled some figures out. Now, in the next few minutes, I'm going to be moving the camera around, trying to get the best focus, trying to get the best picture for the thumbnail. Just enjoy this little part of the video where I kind of move the camera around and I zoom in and I move the tile that I've got it sitting on. Whoa, that focus is great right there. Beautiful focus. Okay, but let's take a look at, let's evaluate this church real quick. You got the roof. Looks pretty weathered. It's good. It's got the foundation. It's got the brick wall around the bottom edge of it. It's got these cardstock wood frame around the edges of the building. It's got the door frame, the green door. It has the wall going all the way around it. I'm trying to get it closer to the camera so I don't have to use so much zoom, so I can use less zoom and get the camera even closer to the church, because then it'll be less fuzzy. I'm lowering the tripod, trying to get it down to a like a closer to ground level look. I was trying to match it up with the road, but that's not really important. Plus, this isn't where the church would be. It would be all the way on the other side of the map. So, but that's okay. You got the walls, the outer walls. You can see the cardstock window frames. They got the brick walls, how they look like brick walls. I mean, they look really good, and I like the corner posts, the, what do you call them, the columns, and how they've got their little caps on the top, and then how the grass on the inside is a slightly different color than the grass on the outside, and how the church can come off, and you could put troops, the roof comes off, that's where you put the troops on the inside. But if you needed to put the church somewhere else on the battlefield, you could. Actually, if you really wanted to, you could have just a cemetery and just a church. Like I could put the church somewhere else and leave the cemetery right there. Now I'm going to turn it a little bit because I'm realizing who cares if it's sitting on the road or not. It's really about the church itself. I got a guy standing in the doorway. I got a guy kneeling over here by the wall, and then we got the infantry in front of the wall, because I just wanted to give you like a scale comparison, what it looked like. All right, guys, if you liked this church, it was a one-day assemble. I started at 11 a.m. On my live stream. We took a couple hours on my live stream, and then I finished the rest of it off live, and off live and live added together. I had 7.5 hours worth of video, so it took me about 7.5 hours to build this. And what do you think? Is that something that you would like on your battlefield? Is that something that, if you were playing in my game, you would be like, oh, that's a pretty cool looking church? Or would you be, and then the troops can fit inside. They could sit on the, I don't know. What do you guys think? Thank you for coming out and watching this video. I know it was a long one, and I tried to do as much editing as possible to get it as low as I can. And look forward to more videos in regards to my World War II battle group project. All right, I'll catch you next time.